It is a pleasure to welcome you to our Spring 2018 Hayat Leadership Talk. Let me take this opportunity to acknowledge and thank our sponsors, Kenneth Hyatt for endowing this leadership series, and MBP for sponsoring our leadership dinners. Without much ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our Olmsted Associate Chair, Professor Carrie Watkins, who also teaches in the Global Engineering Leadership Program, to introduce our distinguished speaker.
Thank you, Adjo. So I promised Mr. Calhoun, Bill, if I may, I promised him I would make this short and sweet, but he has a pretty amazing career to talk about and does a lot of things in the community as well. So we have to do that a little bit of justice before he starts to speak. So it's my honor to introduce William Calhoun, Bill, who is the Vice Chairman and Executive Vice President of Clark Construction Group. He drives the company's strategic direction in that role, including finding new projects and new markets. He earned his bachelor's degree in civil engineering here at Georgia Tech in 1981, so he even predates me a little bit around this place. And since then, he's spent 35 years at Clark providing leadership on a range of award-winning projects that have included some sensitive government projects, such as a National Geospatial Intelligence Agency new campus East on Fort Belfour. Did I say it right? In Virginia. And then a number of sports venues like Washington, D.C.'s Capital One Arena. He is a member of the National Academy of Construction, so that's quite an honor. And in addition to all of this, he gives significant time to service. He's on the Board of Visitors at the University of Maryland's Clark School of Engineering, the Board of Directors for the Construction Industry Roundtable, and he's a corporate advisor for the nonprofit So Others Might Eat, which gives food, clothes, and health care to DC's poor and homeless. And then in addition to all that, he's come back to Georgia Tech to help serve on the Construction Advisory Board for the last few years. So he gives great service to us as well. And so with that, please join me in welcoming Bill Calhoun.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Carrie. Thank you, Adjo. It's great to be back. Before I get started, who here feels like they know enough about Clark they could maybe stand up and tell me a little bit about the company? Does anybody really know anything about Clark? Well, I know you do, Blake. I've got a few friends in the audience, hecklers here. Good to see a couple of the old guys like Blake here. We're very much under the radar as a company. It doesn't surprise me that you all don't know a lot about the company. It's kind of who we are. Under the radar, don't seek publicity. We're an operations-driven company. Are there any young people here who have accepted offers to come to work at Clark? Okay, there's at least two in the audience. Welcome. I hope that I don't mess this up and cause you to rethink what you've decided to do. So I'm going to talk very quickly about where I've been, and a little bit about Clark, just so that you have the context of what my 35 plus years have been, so you understand a little bit why I think the way I do or feel the way I do about leadership. And most of today I want to talk about really 5 buckets of leadership that, to me, as I got ready for this, kind of came to my mind. These are the things that are important and guide me and what I go back to when I make decisions. So with that, quickly, let me just run through this, and we can talk more about my experience if you want it later over lunch or dinner. I came to Tech in '77, and I grew up in Philadelphia, and I got here. It was really simple. I was very analytical in high school. This was the best value civil engineering education I could get anywhere in the country. And it's the only place I applied. I came down here, I got admitted, I came here, and I never looked back. I got out in '81. I had a great year, a lot of offers. I threw them all away, and I was scared of every one of them, that it was going to make me very good at something very specific, and I wanted to continue my education. I wanted to get into general contracting. And I called a contractor that I eventually went to work for in South Florida. They weren't hiring, talked my way into a job. After a terrible 2.5 years, the end of '83, terrible because it was a horrible project I was on, and great advice from my father, who encouraged me to not quit. You're not a quitter, finish what you started, and I did, and probably learned more on that one job than any job I've been on since. You learn a lot from a bad project, and I think there's a message in that. But talked my way into the job at Clark. They weren't hiring when I called. Ended up with a job there, so that was end of '83. Started in Washington, D.C., focused on interior work, remodeling, big interior of offices that we were building. Went to Philadelphia because we had a job in trouble, volunteered. Having been through a job in trouble, I said, if I can control it, I can influence the outcome. So in the Nick Selby words, we can do that. I could do that. I wanted to go do that and tackle that. Ended up in Philadelphia going after a job that the company said don't go after. I went after it and won it and built it, and that's the 2 Liberty Place. It was about 60 floors for one tenant. Big high-risk job. It finished on time. A great relationship with the owner, made some money. At that time, our chairman asked me to move to South Texas. He said, I'd like you to go run a low lump sum hospital. And I questioned his leadership in a low-key way. I said, Pete, I've never done a government job. I've never built a hospital, never been to Texas. I don't even understand what a joint venture is. You really mean me? Biggest job we've got in the company right now. And he said, yes, and some key words. He said, I know you know what you don't know, and you'll surround yourself with good people. It's about leadership. Went there, came back, job finished 8.5 months ahead of schedule. But I tell everybody the reason it did was because the head of the Corps of Engineers, the job was administering the job to us, was a Georgia Tech grad. So you get 2 tech grads together, and we can do that. Came back to DC, worked in a series of operational, built some buildings, ended up going to Harvard Business School for about 3 months. Great takeaway there was an advanced management program and the International Senior Manager Program. My living group had people from Istanbul, Johannesburg, Berlin, Tokyo, Seoul. I really learned the people influence, cultural influence, the emotional side of decision making and leadership. It really came alive for me. Back to DC, operational assignments, ran a group. The Mid-Atlantic is our flagship. Split that group, developed about $3 billion of backlog with my group, which was phenomenal at the time. This was about 08, 09 when the market was crashing. I thought I was going to do fine. The chairman broke up my group into 3 or 4 pieces. He said, we're going to establish a new position called the vice chairman. You're going to be it. You're going to get involved with what we do everywhere. Figure out how we go get work, why do we get work, what kind of risk do we want to go after, and lead the company. And so that's really been what I've done. The company builds everything. Lower left on the screen is the Music City Center, which is a big convention center in Nashville. Somebody recognizes it. We do a lot of convention centers. Petco Park, we do some sports. We're not the biggest sports builder. I don't really like sports work that much, but we do it. Lower right, highly acclaimed, recently opened National Museum for African American History and Culture. Fantastic facility and museum, and if you haven't get a chance, do go see it. Top right, we're real proud of, tallest building west of the Mississippi. That's Salesforce Tower in San Francisco. We just finished that job, and a very, very cool addition to the skyline. If you look back in that picture, you can see, I think that's a Transamerica Tower, which everybody thinks is the big icon in San Francisco. We're, I think, about 300 feet taller than anybody else. 112 years old now, one of the largest privately held general contractors in the U.S. We're different than most because we still self-perform a lot of work. We have subsidiaries that are wholly owned. Atkinson is a big, heavy highway. They're in the West Coast, they're in the Northwest. They do tunnels, they do underground work. Shirley's a road builder in the Mid-Atlantic. C3M is a company that does traction and transit, power, control systems, signalization. And then not on there, I should have on there, is Edgemore, who is a in-house development company. We do public-private partnerships. We go do the development, raising of the money, and do those deals. So we do all kinds of construction. 8 offices around the U.S., those are the orange ones, lots of major projects all over. Then Atlanta, lower left, Hartsfield, back in the early 70s, we did one of the first big expansions of the main terminal. The blue streetcars, Atlanta streetcars, C3M's doing the overhead catenary replacement and repairs. Lower right is a tunnel here going from Bellwood Quarry over to RM Clayton. RM Clayton we built, I'm guessing now it was maybe in the late 80s. But we got a TBM running as we speak, about a 2-mile tunnel. And then the top red is the job we signed a contract for last week. It's the Atlanta Plane Train. We're extending the tunnel in a progressive design build contract under the airport. We're extending the tunnel to provide additional capacity and turnaround. So that's a little bit about who we are. I've been around the company, grew up in operations. My focus in the company is acquisitional work, both here and today, next year, and where are we going for the next 5 years, geographically, product-wise, how do we get our people into the right markets, what risk is embedded. I sat and thought about today on one of my trans-US flights from DC to LA or Seattle, and I wrote down a stream of consciousness. I did it twice, put it down, and got back together, and I said, what's important to me? And it all fell into 5 buckets, and that's what I want to talk about. The first bucket is really, to me, it's not necessarily always easy, but it's the easy thing to talk about because it's my foundation. You do the right thing. You always do the right thing. The right thing ethically, morally, by your people, safety, by your owners, their projects, their goals. And we get involved, and I typically get involved with problems that are not the easy problems. They get solved. The problems that come to me are complex, many dimensions, involve people, sometimes bad news. And this is my foundation, and I'm suggesting as a leader it should be your foundation. Fall back to what's right. You know what's right. And there are no compromises on acting with integrity and honesty in everything you do. I just read a quote last week after I put these notes together. Jeff Bezos was counseling his senior execs, and his comment was, when you're making your biggest, most important decisions, listen to your heart. That's his way of saying, listen to your gut. Do the right thing. 15 years ago, our oldest of 3 children was going away for undergrad. And my wife said to him, and I'll never forget this, don't put anything in an email that you'd be embarrassed by if your grandmother read it. And I remember at the time that it's a little overboard. And I thought, I doubted the wisdom of that advice. Boy, was I wrong, okay? As I always am when I doubt my wife's advice. And I mean that. And please remember, Blake, to tell her that. Look at the news today. Look at the texts going back and forth from people from the Department of Justice. If you do the right thing, you act the right way, and you know what that is, you don't have to worry about what's coming back to haunt you. I may worry a little bit about this being on YouTube, but truthfully, I mean, it is a grounding foundation for me. Part of doing the right thing to me is also acting in the project's best interest, not your own self-interest. And this was a growth for me. The first job I did in DC, a large developer came to town. I'm going to try to keep names out of this. And we were awarded their job. Big flagship project. I was the project manager on all the interior work. The only money we were going to make on the job is if we turned over, there were maybe 10 big, complex law firm build-outs. We had a bonus with each one. And the only way we were going to win is win our bonus was if we got done on time. And I conducted a year and a half's worth of work as the project manager, and I had a whole lot of tough conversations every week, every month. Arguing about change orders, arguing about whose fault the job was a day off. You didn't return the submittal in time. Your drawings weren't complete. I was the battle master. I won every argument, professionally, not ugly. But the job was all in, all done, and they wanted to negotiate the next job with us. And it was on a proviso that I was not involved. And quite honestly, I was happy to hear that at the time. I didn't want to deal with them. They're arrogant. They're entitled, they don't do their job that well, and all these things. I was acting in my own self-interest, and I set that up. And at the time, my perspective was, I'm okay with that. I don't really want to deal with people who aren't as smart as I am or aren't conducting themselves. But I was the battle master. It was my own self-interest, my company's self-interest, and that's the point I want to leave you with, and I'll come back to that in a minute. My second bucket is assume a position of accountability. And I heard Ken Schatz, who wrote Managing by Influence, and it's a good book. You ought to read it. A long time ago. And his words that stuck with me is, what did I do or not do to make that happen or not happen? And that's very much keeping in the Georgia Tech way. We can do that. We're responsible. We can change the world. We can change the outcome. I live from that perspective. Of course, we can't change everything, but I assume I can, and I try. And I think what comes with that is the need that you have to be introspective. When you didn't change it or you didn't get the outcome you want, you have to be strong enough to accept your weaknesses, to seek counsel, listen to people, and get smarter. That is part of being accountable. And in that example I showed a minute ago, The year after that job was finished and we were doing the next job, my perspective changed. I said, what if my goal, my driving force was, yes, get the job done, yes, earn the bonus, but what if I got along with that owner in a way that at the end of the job, that owner wanted me, forget the company, me to do their next job because I acted in the project's best interest, not mine. And when you act in your own best interest, you polarize. Everybody polarizes. Everybody tightens up. I'm blaming the design and the civil engineer. He didn't get the structure right. He missed the detail. Okay, everybody's defensive. But what if you were the force to be the project's best interest? How do we collaborate? And the owner wanted me, and by wanting me, he wanted us, my company. Isn't that the right perspective? And my perspective has changed ever since. That's how I lead. I accept accountability. I take criticism. And I look for these qualities in other people around me. People sometimes are victims. Everything happens with somebody else's fault. Some people assume whether it really even was my fault or not. I could have changed that. I submit to you all, that's the right perspective to be. It's worked for me. It's who I am. When I said I went to San Antonio or to Texas after Philadelphia, and well, let me back up. One more corollary to this be accountable is also run right at your problems. And that's sometimes difficult. On the toughest problems, human nature is to kind of, resolving this is going to be some confrontation. It's going to be maybe delivery of bad news. Maybe I'm going to lose some money. Not easy to address. Human nature is to kind of, if I can avoid that and maybe tomorrow, maybe it'll get better. Well, it doesn't get better. You run right at your problems. And I read a quote, in fact, I saw a little video between Jack Welch, who is GE, and Warren Buffett. I mean, talking about two powerhouses talking. It was pretty cool just to listen to him. And I think Welch was interviewing Buffett. They were talking about Buffett has steered Berkshire through some really tough times, some big crisis, and he said, what's the advice? And I got to look here. I want to make sure I get this quote right. But Buffett said, get it right, get it fast, get it out, and get it over. That's kind of his way of saying, run right at your problem. It's not going to get better over time. When I went to Texas, I was there for a couple of months getting this massive project started in over my head. And I'll never forget the Department of Labor called. They wanted to talk to me. I was the head guy on the job. And they said, want to let you know, this is the biggest federal job in the Southwest in a long time. We're going to make a target out of you. I said, that doesn't sound good, and I don't like being a target. He says, what's this all about? Compliance with labor standards, specifically bringing women and minorities into the workforce, and there were percentage goals for every trade. And so I took a few days, I read the regs, I learned about it, and I called them back. And I said, can I change your perspective? I don't want to be a target. Can we collaborate? You know a lot more about this than I do. Can we bring a group together, and can we say this job is going to be the new star for the Department of Labor, that we made a difference? We've got a massive job, 4-year job. How can we all collaborate and look back when it's done and say, that's the way you should bring minorities and women into the workforce? Let's collaborate. And we did. I started a committee. We met every 2 months. NAACP, Bexar County Women's Association. I got the unions to the table, the subcontractors, Department of Labor, Corps of Engineers, and we worked hard, and we made a difference. End of the job, and I knew nothing about this during the job. The Department of Labor called back, and they said, we'd like you to submit your project for the EVE Award, Exemplary Voluntary Effort. I didn't know what it was. And I think we were at the time maybe the only construction company ever to be considered. We did, we won it. I got a chance to have a very intimidating lunch with the Secretary of Labor at the time, Robert Reich. But the example is one, the perspective. Why the police are going to check it in? Why build the folders and build the case? Why not change it around? Let's be the example of how to do it right. And so that's the accountability nature and running right at the problem coming out. Everything I do involves people. For some of us that are engineers and are really introverts, technically we're comfortable and we're good. When it gets into the people thing, we start getting a little more touchy-feely, a little more uncomfortable. But as a leader, the people side of life is really important. Empathy is a word that has always come to me when I think about business and relationships and transactions. You have to understand the risks, the definition of success, the shoes that the other walks in, if you're going to get to win-win negotiations and high-value solutions that are maybe lower cost to you. In 1992, there were about 20 of us in the company, young, high potentials, that were asked to go away for a weekend with the old guard of the company. This is the early 90s, the old guard, crusty old construction guys. And we were asked to participate in a strategic planning issue, and they said, each one of you, talk about a value that you think this company should have, argue it, and then we're going to vote on it. Mine was empathy. It was easy. We got to look for, we have to understand our owners better, what their needs are, what their risks are, what their definition of success is. I went on and on and on. We voted on the 20 values that we wanted to characterize us. I didn't make the top 10. And I was totally demoralized. And I couldn't understand how these guys just didn't think the intelligence of empathy. And our chairman at the time, Pete Forrester, like you know Pete, came over to me at the break, and he could tell I'm not sure I even want to work for this company. They just don't get it. And he said, Bill, stay with it. You're ahead of your time. You'll bring them around. Stay with it. And I've never let go of that. As many of you know, I think in the introduction, I focus now on acquisition work. I spend a lot of my time. We establish 18, 24 months in advance. We identify priority target, big complex projects across the United States with all of our business units. We work hard to develop relationships, not one relationship one time, but deep relationships to understand our owners, their needs, etc. I try to get us positioned as a trusted advisor. That's another good book and a good concept, to be the trusted advisor to your owner. When we build our value proposition, we go after this work, we do very well where we've done this. We're in the 50% hit ratio, win ratio on these kinds of projects. And so it works. I know it works year over year. I preach that we want to be the builder of choice for every priority target. What does that mean? It means different things to different organizations. You don't get that by calling them or reading the bid documents. You got to have the relationships to understand that. People work with who they want to. I want to set up quickly a minute video for you. About 3 or 4 months ago, we went after a large project in Kansas City. It's the new Kansas City International Airport Terminal. It's a $1 billion project. Anybody here heard anything about it? You've seen it in the news? It was a Hail Mary pass for us to some degree, and before we went down to make the presentation, literally every single person on our team mutinied and said, we're out. And I remember in my office on Friday afternoon, we had to make the presentation Monday. They had concluded we didn't have a chance. 4 good competitors, we were one of them, 2 local firms, very big names. We work with both of them, so I don't want to disparage them. But they had run a pursuit process where they were in the news, disparaging each other, thinking they were the only 2 real choices, disparaging the owner, the city. They were claiming conflict of interest with the owner's attorney, conflict of interest with people on the valuation. I mean, they were talking trash with each other. They were posting their designs on the internet before they put them in. They thought, I've got so much public behind me that I'm going to win this thing. I'm entitled. And I told our team Friday afternoon, it was at 2 o'clock on Friday afternoon, I looked at the presentation, it was 82 pages, and I threw it in the trash. So we're not doing this. We have all day tomorrow, all day Sunday, and Monday until 1 o'clock to stand up in front of this owner and throw a Hail Mary pass. Everybody gets 1 slide. We're not taking an hour, we're taking 30 minutes. You have a goal, and your goal in each position, we're not going to talk about all this quality control and safety and scheduling and all that stuff. Everybody talks about that. We got world class and all that. They read the proposal. Your job is to make them want to work with you. They got to project and see that you're a group that they really think represents their interest. They've been beat up for the last 3 months by these other teams. Let's get in there and let's show them that we are going to be a trusted advisor to them in every way of the word. They have to want to work with you. So when the curtain came down and we won, of course, I was as amazed as anybody. Okay, it was a Hail Mary. We didn't know this owner for a year in advance. And the city manager, Troy Schulte, was asked, news cameras on, why did you pick, who's this company called Edgemore? That's the Clark company. Who are they and why'd you pick them? We hadn't even heard of them. We certainly haven't seen them in the news. And so I'm going to play for you what he said, and then I want to talk about it for just a minute.
You're going to spend $1 billion, and it's a 5-year project, as this one is going to be. Yeah. or more than 5-year project, you better have some comfort level with the person that you're working with. And I just got the distinct impression through the presentation, through the formal submission, that Edgemoor was a group that we could work with. They didn't come in with a preconceived idea of, here are issues that are wrong. They came in with an approach that said, here's how we can deliver what you want in Kansas City. And it was a sense, and it was an approach, and it was the way they handled the procurement process that I felt they could be one that we could work with. Yeah, and I think that's important. It's all about relationships, because at the end of the day, we want a terminal that Kansas City can be proud of, and that's going to take the airlines, that's going to take the city, and it's going to take our contractor and architect working together to get that out. That's good.
You didn't hear him say they had the lowest price. 4 teams, we were the only one. We didn't even submit a design. Everybody laughed at me. I lost my designer 3 weeks before the submittal. One of the hometown teams is so strong in Kansas City, they convinced both my designer, big national firm, and my local joint venture construction partner to lead my team 3 weeks before turn-in. Okay, my team was in there, they were thinking right when they said, Calhoun, you got to give it up. So I was as astounded as anybody. But you didn't hear they had another design. And what I told everybody is, they asked me in the interview, why didn't we see your design? Everybody else has posted them on the internet. I said, you didn't ask for a design. You asked for a team and a designer and a process to go forward. I know you've already hired a designer and you did program documents that you haven't shared with us. The way to do design build going forward is I meet with all of you, the city council members. I meet with the airlines. I meet with all the wards in the city and find out what the citizens want. I'm not so presumptuous as to say, here's what you need. I need to listen to you first. The process, the way I do it, is I listen to the people who I'm building for. Okay? That resounded with them. You didn't hear them say you had a better design, because we didn't have any design. You know, I told everybody I'm going to take a brown bag, and if they ask me to design, I'm going to say it's inside here, and if you pick me, I'll show it to you. Obviously, I'm being facetious. I wouldn't have said that. But they didn't say lower price, better people, more experience. None of that. I heard exactly the things I'm talking about. Relationships, trusted advisor. I heard when you're going to spend $1 billion and have a 5-year project, you better have some comfort with the person, meaning the people you're working with. Distinct impression that Edgemoor was a group we could work with. They said how we will deliver what you want in Kansas City. It's all about relationships. It's going to take our team working together. The competition left the door wide open for that. We didn't know it was going to work, but man, did it ever. And it's been a fun win for us, and we're off and sailing now. So the 4th bucket is know the business. It's not just your business, but it's your client's business. And I say this because as we get out of school, we're in consulting or design or construction, and you've got a task, and you've got bigger tasks and bigger responsibilities. At some point, you need to know the business. And if you got a job finished on time, your client, your owner, they had a great relationship with you, your sub-consultants, your subcontractors, everybody liked it, they want to work. Those are all good metrics. But those are not the only metrics. There's business metrics. Were you cash flow negative for 2 or 3 years? Did you burn your people out? Was there a risk embedded in that contract that was, if things went wrong, you could have bet your company and didn't even know it? What was the opportunity cost? Could you have done 3 jobs and made 3 times as much money in that same time frame? Those are things you need to know about and learn about, because we're in business to make profit, and that's not an ugly word. And profit enables us to reinvest in the company and our people, develop our people, give back to the community. So it's really where you want to be. Growing into a role where you understand the business is important. It's also important that you learn your client's business, because oftentimes the client's business, if you understand that and the way you align your services to help them in their business endeavor, differentiates you. And David Packard's quote I love, and Jim Collins, the other business professor, used this a lot too. Jim Collins did the Built to Last and Good to Great in that series, a lot of great books. Great companies don't go out of business in hard times from starvation. They go out of business from indigestion, our desire to get that next job. We take risk. We didn't know when to say no. It's really important to know when to say no. And don't take really bad work that you can see is coming bad, because it is such an impact, negative impact on the organization, the people. It burns people out. and costs money, and you go out of business more slowly from no business than bad business. So it's really important. And I find learning when to say no, because of this Georgia Tech, we can do that. You know, we're all, optimists, eternal optimists. It's hard to say no. And I could go through a string of 5 or 6 jobs in the last 5 years that I said no to. And I am so happy watching those other firms take these jobs and just, so glad. I've been on bad jobs. We don't always see it coming. But boy, when you do, you got to know when to say no. So I want to set up, I want to go to the next slide here. This is a project. It was in the introduction, National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. Talk through it real quick because I think there's a number of things in here. It's rich with examples. Back in 2008, there was a thing called BRAC, Base Realignment and Closure. And Congress said to some of the federal services that we have to have a whole bunch of these facilities done and operational by September 11th of 2011. It was just an imposed date. And they had to do this, and they got money to do it. And it forced into the marketplace a bunch of work that wasn't ready to come to the marketplace, but because Congress said it has to be done. Blake, you were involved with some of these with us, and thank you for your help. This project we bid, and it was about 20% design when it came to the market. The design team worked for the owner. We had to bid a target price, which was basically us saying, as your design team finishes the project, we think it should cost X. We said it was going to cost, rounded off, $1.5 billion. And we had to bid a ceiling price. Regardless of what we, the owner, design, if it goes above the ceiling price, you own all the cost. So we bid a ceiling price. We had some qualifications. And we have to be done by September 11th, 11. Our mentality of this job approach was first to bid not what we thought would be a low bid. I said, if we don't win the job, we don't have to have this job. We build all these facilities. There's a $100 million tech data center, a big 100% redundant power plant, 2.5 million square feet of office space, all skiffed and certified as for the classified work done inside, a mammoth parking garage, visitor center, 11 miles of roads, a lot of work. We build all that stuff. Let's not put a price on it that is the most optimistic, but let's put a book together of what we think it will cost if the design was finished. Comp it to historical work. Pick where we think they come in. Qualify what we need to qualify. If we're twice their price, that's okay. I can look them in the eye and say, if you're real, this is what it should cost you for this facility. If you're buying low price, good luck. We also bid a schedule because they gave us a document schedule. Here's how we're going to finish the design. We said, well, based on that, here's how we can build it. We're going to be 6 months late on September 11th, and that's what we're bidding. Most federal jobs, you'd be non-responsive. You'd be kicked out in a heartbeat. They brought us in and we talked. We said, tell us about what does operational mean? You can't move 8,500 people in one weekend. How do you move your people in? How do your analysts that take all this data coming from the satellites, how do you move in? How do they do that? How do you certify spaces? Do you move in vertically, by floor, by building? And once we understand their business, we said, well, you got the program all wrong. Your design packages don't coordinate with how I would build it so that I could finish it so that you could certify the space, put the furniture in, move your technical analysts in the way you want to. So we changed everything about the program and started over. And then design and construction were 2 of the 21 critical elements to the mission success. And I'll never forget at a very early meeting, I was talking about the design and construction. We just had construction. And a woman who was very high up in NGA looked at me in front of everybody. He said, you're talking about driving. We contracted with you to drive the bus from here to LA. Our mission doesn't succeed until we get to Hawaii. So could we please talk about how do we get to Hawaii? And all of a sudden, this big picture, the project's best interest. What's their mission? Not just about construction. The construction was 1, design was 2 of 21 elements. How do I get the space certified so that I can put classified information in? How do I take the passive cabling from the contractor and put this network of hardware and active software in place? How do I move my people? How do I furnish it? Many, many things they had to do. We were at the round table. I was on a board. They had a board that met for 4 hours once a month. We had an executive leadership team of all 21 constituents that were over the project, and then we had each one of these buildings was a project to itself, and they had a team. And so we worked in the best interest of the project, understanding the owner's needs. We finished on that 6-month ahead target. We won the National AGC Partnering, Marvin Black Partnering Award after the fact for the way we got along and what we accomplished. And in a little bit of a poetic outcome, the award was given at the National AGC convention in Hawaii. So we all went to Hawaii. Which we all thought that was kind of fun. So the last bucket that I want to talk about, that's Mr. Clark's picture, and that's Mr. Clark's quote. And you know, I had the good fortune to be mentored and work for Mr. Clark for a lot of years and got my butt chewed many times as well. Mr. Clark's probably the most philanthropic guy that in person and family and created that culture and company that I've ever met. And I'm proud to say, I know we're talking about it now, that his foundation has started a Clark Scholars Program here at Georgia Tech. It's about to kick off, and I think eventually we'll have maybe 4 cohorts. There'll be maybe 40 full-time scholars going through Georgia Tech on Clark Scholarships. And that program, Clark Scholars, is I think at Hopkins in Maryland, GW, they may be doing it at Vanderbilt, Penn State, so there's a bunch of them. I was present when his daughter and the foundation and his wife, Mrs. Clark, donated $219 million to the University of Maryland, his alma mater, a couple months ago. So really philanthropic guy. He is asked and expected that of all of us. And okay, I'm getting short on time, I'm getting the signal. Okay, I think as a leader in a company, you give back, you spend your time on these things, and you show others that it's okay. You make it easier for others to spend a little bit of their time away from work, and you make it easier to do the right thing and give back. It's important. Giving back to me, though, also means your industry, your alma mater, roundtables, advisory panels, and groups. And the point I want to make with that is that it's like putting money in the bank in terms of compound interest growth. You can't just decide one year I'm going to do a few things and then you got all these acquaintances. You do a little bit over time, and I can tell you, I know people in organizations, all in federal agencies and organizations, because I've gotten to interact with them at a round table or at a peer review of something, and you develop relationships and they last, and these people grow with you and they come back to you in great ways in time. And it's hard for me typically to get young people who have lots of things going on in life to see the value of go to that dinner. There's a bunch of 3-star and 4-star admirals at that dinner. Someday they're going to be important to you. Get to know them. And people, I struggle to get people out to do that. And I don't know why, but when I was young, in San Antonio, someone said, I want you to go to National AGC and participate on some committees. I got to know people. At the time, it was, I didn't want to do it. I didn't have the time to do it. I had a young family, working 6 days a week, but I did it, and I started, and I never stopped. And it pays dividends all the time. I was asking a young lady who's worked for us for 15 or more years to read my notes and tell me does anything sound really hokey, and she said, "Do you know the most impactful thing you ever said to me?" And I said, well, I'm not sure I want to know this, but go ahead and tell me. And she said, well, 10 years ago when I was out on maternity leave, and I called in after 2 weeks, and I asked about a job, and I answered the question. I said, I don't want you to call me anymore. I said, you're starting a family, you're at home, you're taking maternity leave. We will take care of this job. You need to forget about work. You need to focus. You're bringing a new family into life. You'll never get this time back. Focus on your family. And I hadn't heard that for 10 plus years, and she said that to me. And my point is, as a leader, your words and your actions have a lot more impact on people than you realize. I had no idea that I had impacted her in that way so long ago. Think about that. By example, what you do, what you say means a lot to people. So I want to take the brief time we have left, this is a slide I wanted to show you. You do the right thing in the community, not because you get to meet the President of the United States, but because you really don't. That's not why I do this stuff. It's Mr. Clark in the middle and the bottom. Some things we do around town. The bottom right, I got a call Friday afternoon, and this is for So Others Might Eat, which is a great organization. They return hope and dignity to a human homeless person, one person at a time, get them healthy, get them trained, get them back into the workforce. It's a great organization. But one afternoon, Friday afternoon, the Catholic priest that runs it, he called me and said, Bill, I need you to represent the board on Monday at lunch. I said, well, Father, I've got a lot planned on Monday. You got to give me a little more advance warning. He said, no, I have to have you here. I said, well, I'll check and see if I can get there. And he said, I need your social and I need your date of birth. And so I said, well, this is probably somebody pretty important. He didn't tell me who. I showed up, and it's four of us standing in a room, and half an hour later, Barack and Michelle Obama and their two children walk in. I'm like, hey, how you doing? Like, this is weird. But yeah, and I served lunch for an hour and a half with the president, and it was done. I was like, wow, it was surreal, the whole thing. That's not why you do the right thing, though. So when I finished my notes up, I went back and I looked at Andy Phelps's talk last year. And Andy's a friend of mine. He's a great guy. And he will accuse me of copying with this next point. But I didn't. I assure you I didn't. I came up with 2 industry challenges. I said I wanted to talk a little bit about the future, give you some thoughts, things that are exciting to me, and I think you all need to go out and tackle. And my first one was the same thing that Andy's first one was. He was a builder of cities around the world to enable big plants to be constructed. I'm a national buildings guy, so very different perspectives, but we had the same thought. It's about construction productivity. 13% of the world's GDP, 1% improvement in construction productivity. And you can argue the numbers. There's different studies that say different things. Look at the graph. The blue is manufacturing and the orange is construction. Something's not working. Why are we not improving productivity? We're doing the right things. You know, we do all these things. You know, we're doing automated data gathering. We're doing building information modeling in terms of pre-coordination. It's enabling prefabrication, wall units, bathroom pods. This lower right is SAM, the semi-automated mason. We're doing some robotic masonry. And we're doing virtual design and construction. We're doing all these things. But productivity is not, we're not moving the needle yet, okay? We may be at the base of the curve, but there's a long way to go here. And we have a problem looking forward in construction. It's workforce, availability of skilled workforce. It's a big problem today, and it is growing, and we got to get this productivity thing worked on. Amusing anecdote, the top, read left to right across the top. The job in Texas I was responsible for was 1.5 million square feet of functional floor space on a new hospital. We had, there's I think 17 people in that picture. I think we had about 20 full-time equivalents to build that hospital, and we got done 8.5 months early. It's now with Clark, we're with McCarthy, a joint venture partner. We're building the same basic hospital in West Texas, in El Paso. It's almost a third smaller. We have 73 people on the job, professionals, engineers, managers, quality control, et cetera. 73 versus 20. We can talk for hours about why that is. Blake, you can tell us why that is. But something's not working right in construction. We got to solve this problem. The second thing I wanted to talk about, and this is exciting to me, and it's why aren't we as an industry looking at life cycle cost of a built facility as part of the decision process of what we do? And I want to explain something to you here. This graph this pie chart shows it. If you look at the construction and design and transition, that represents about 13% of the life cycle cost of a facility. And again, there's different studies, but they basically say the same thing. The other 87% of life cycle cost is in the operations and maintenance and utility consumption and replacement of equipment and janitorial service, all those other things. But our industry doesn't talk about that. And because of the way we go about awarding, evaluating, and awarding construction and design, the incentives don't touch that. These are 3, I know this is very busy, you don't have to get all this right now, but there are 3 primary ways, and there's a bunch of variants, but design, build, CM at risk, and bid build. Those dollar signs show when we would be awarded the job and when we'd go at risk. And so in design build, typically it's qualifications. What does your design look like? How have you solved my design issues? And price. And price is a big part of it. And you know, the saying in our field is it's best value as long as you're low. CM at risk is generally purchased. It's got the same quals and best value, but the financial metric is the GCs and fee. GCs are general conditions. It's the professional services. It's the management and supervision. GCs and fee are about 10% of the construction cost. Think of the graph. If, what was it, 13 or 10% was design and construction, well, if 10% of that is the discriminator and CM at risk, we're talking about 1% of the life cycle cost of the facility is the metric that we're judged on. And design, bid, build is even worse. Low first cost. Who's low first cost? For the most part. Again, best value. Sometimes I sell a job if I'm second, and we do that, but that's not most of the time. So what's the incentive on all those things? It's low first cost. It's low management cost. Build the job with one less person. Don't have the person there to look ahead and try to solve problems. Lower fee. I have no fee, no profit. It's the incentives don't touch the 87%. Now, again, too busy to understand at a moment, but all the way on the left is the circle, it's bid build. Agency risk means the owner takes the risk. If bid build, I contract to do what's on your drawings, you own the risk whether those drawings are complete, whether there's errors, and if I gotta have change orders or more time, that's your risk. The incentive was low cost, low first cost. All the way on the right, in a different variance to public-private partnerships, is a circle, I'm gonna blow it up for you. Design, build, finance, operate, maintain. Now, when I bid that job, the basis of award, and I'm being a little simplistic here, is a net present value of all 100% of that cost around the circle. So what's the incentive? My incentive, if I'm being judged, I got to get the design right. I got to get the technical proposal, the quality control, the safety. I got to get all that stuff right. But if I can collaborate, truly collaborate, with the structural designer, the mechanical, the system designer, the financial structuring people, the folks that are going to operate the building, and I can reduce that 87%. I don't look at first costs. I weigh first costs against lifetime costs. Carpet's way more expensive. This carpet we're standing on than terrazzo. Okay? Terrazzo is way more expensive first cost, but it'll be there for 35 years. This will be replaced, whatever, 7 times. It's more expensive brought back to a present value. So this is where we need to be focusing if we're going to move the needle on what really matters. And it's not the right answer for everything, but we need to do more of it if we're going to incentivize true collaboration and moving the needle on the total life cycle cost. So that's it. I don't know how late I am, but I guess we open it up for some questions. And I do want to tell everybody that I brought with me today Mike Penland. Mike's here. He's a University of Michigan grad, so don't throw stuff at him. And that's just in case I get any really tough questions, I'm going to volunteer him. So thank you. This has been a lot of fun to get ready for.
Nice presentation, Bill. I sent you an email about the public-private partnership and issues, the new tax law and impact of that. Can you comment on that?
The impact of the new tax law?
Yeah, I mean
on public-private partnerships.
Yeah, the interest part of that used to be 100% deductible. When you, like Edgemore or your company goes after that, the equity side of that 100%, you would be covered. But the new tax law bring it down to 30%. So just want to know.
The easy and quick answer from my perspective is I don't fully understand the impact. So this is one I throw to Mike. As a company putting these things together, Edgemore is our leader. We typically don't put the equity in, although we have. We're the ringleader. We'll go find some investors who put the equity into the deal, and then we'll go find the debt, okay, the loan for the long term. And then that development management group, often led by Edgemore, with the debt and equity into the circle, they subcontract to us, Clark, and we usually have a designer with us, so it's a design-build contract. The long-term return and tax position for that equity investor would be the one that would be impacted by, I think, your question, and how does the tax law change the perspective for them? And I don't truly know the answer to that. I think I've heard some conversations on it. We have not seen a change yet in the market. We're still, this Kansas City International project, incidentally, is a public-private partnership, but it's reduced in scope. We're the designer, the builder, and we're going to finance it. But there's been no discussion in terms of tax law change there because we're probably going to use just airport revenue bonds and have it be a fully debt solution. However, your question is a good question, and I'm sorry I can't give you more insight, but we have some other projects we're looking at, and the equity and the debt are still there. No one's pulled back and said, we're not interested anymore. It's, the interest level is still there. Mike, seriously, I don't know if you have anything else to add to that, but there's been very little understanding or discussion about the impact of that yet. Thank you for the question.
So you mentioned that we have a challenge that the productivity of our construction is not increasing. So what is your thought? What do you think we're not doing right? Or what do you think we should do to increase that productivity?
I'd love to talk about this. Thank you for that question. I like to talk about this. I think there's 2 or 3 things that I think about when I think about productivity, in no particular order. I think when I think back when I ran the job in San Antonio to what we do today, there's a bucket of stuff, and I put things in buckets, as you can probably tell. I call them peripheral issues, compliance issues. And we have people, I was looking at this the other day and talking to an owner, a monthly pay application for a job. In 1989, I took an example, it was 4 pages for an office building. I took an office building today, it's 1,000 pages. Has to be submitted in draft, reviewed, analysts, financial people look at it, they draft it, they comment it, we change it, we get back to the subs, get a final form and resubmit it. It's 1.5 full-time people working on a monthly pay application. I think compliance with all the labor standards, OSHA standards, all the different regulations, EPA, accusations and liability come at us all the time from every area, so you have to have the defensive stuff in the file, so you got people doing that, taking photographs, documenting best faith efforts, documenting everything because you're going to be challenged. So many people are focused on that. That's one set of things that's happening. I think largely the designs that we see to build are less quality. They're issued too early, and we have to finish the design during construction. That's a problem. Not all jobs, but a lot of jobs. I think the capacity, the skill of the workforce is diminishing. Part of that may be the wage. I think and this would be an interesting study to go back 20 years or 30 years. Look at what the wage was for the skilled craftsman. And has it kept pace with inflation? I don't think it has. I think that's a problem at not bringing smart, capable, hardworking, skilled people into the trades. I think that's a problem. And then I think if you look at a lot of the things that we're doing which are showing little fits and starts of improvement, and I have a lot of hope the technologies are going to drive improvement. They're kind of many of them are novel and are getting into the useful, but getting over that hurdle, taking the liability to be the first, to be on the bleeding edge. Nobody wants to be on the bleeding edge. If I use a new technology and fail, and oftentimes you fail small, but if I'm late on a job, I'm paying damages. So I'm not quite ready to say I can cut 3 months off that job and use this technology. If I use it 3 or 4 times, get better at it, fail a little bit, solve the problem, that 4th time I may be able to have real improvement. We're stuck there largely. Owners don't want to take the liability. They don't want to pay for it. Sometimes technology costs a little more until we all learn how to use it. Okay? Nobody wants to pay for that. We don't typically have R&D budgets in the construction community. We do, but we're one of a few. And so we're struggling as an industry to get that technology into reality, okay? And we'll get there. Universities and some firms are doing that, but it's slow. So I think those are all contributory. And Blake, you may even have something to say to that too. I mean, we all see it. Okay?
Very good. In the interest of time, please join me in thanking our speaker for being
Thank you.
Spencer Maddox, who is in our Global Engineering Leadership Program, will present our speaker with a gift.
Mr. Calhoun, thank you very much
Spencer,
for
thank you.
Inspiring talk. On behalf of the School of Civil Environmental Engineering, I'd like to present you for this gift. I'm sure we would all like to have as successful as a career as you, and just be able to lead like you have.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.
It's been fun. So, Joe, can I say a final 30 seconds? Think about who you want to be and what guides you. I suggest that Doing the right thing is what should guide you. Remember, it's always about the people and the process, not just the results. Think about empathy and to get to win-win. Have fun. Make some friends along the way and love what you do every day. Thank you.